And I guess we're live before the sets on this incredible day. It's so, I mean, let's face it, after the winter we had, whoever thought we'd get 60, 63 or 65-degree days in early April? Yeah, early to mid-April. Anyway, here we go. I have a lot to tell you today, and you need your book. So if you don't have your book with you, get that before you watch the rest of the video, and make sure you have something to write down some notes with, because you're going to need to take some notes on this too. Okay, we're going to be talking about how you document where your information comes from in your research paper, and then a little bit about a works cited list. I'll go into more detail on a works cited list next week, but I want to touch upon it this week, okay? Because I know some of you are getting pretty anxious and your paper is due in 2 weeks. So we're getting darn close to the end of the semester. I think we only have 3 weeks left. I think. I don't know. I'm not sure. Might be 4. I don't know. Whatever. Anyway, we're getting close. So, okay. Now, I've said this to you before, and I've written this in the notes, but I want to make sure you understand that all of the information you take from somebody else, whether it is coming from, directly from the source, so in the original words in the source, or you've taken that idea and put it in your own words, if it's somebody else's idea, which most of your paper should be, most of it should be information you got from someplace else, you have to tell where it comes from, okay? Again, whether it's a direct quote or a paraphrase, you have to tell where it comes from, okay? So, make sure that you figure on telling where all your information comes from. You have a pile of idea cards, and each card is a separate idea, and so each of those ideas you use, you know where it comes from because you marked it on your cards. You showed me that in the work that you did, so you have to show that in your paper. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, in your book, starting on page 225, there is a sample research paper, okay? So if you look in your book on page 225, you'll see a sample research paper. That helps a lot, but I'm going to be more specific than just show you where there's a sample research paper, okay? And let me point out to you that in that sample research paper, they actually write the paper in a way that not many college freshmen do. They write it as if you are mentioning the name of the author of the article or whatever right within the text of your paper. Most college freshmen don't do that. Most college freshmen put down the idea and then in a parenthetical reference, in parentheses, they tell where it comes from. So how do you do that? Okay, so I didn't type this out. I wrote it out. Hopefully, yeah, I think you can see this, right? Where you have some text going on, and that's what the squiggly lines are some text going on. Then you come to the end of an idea, okay? And right here is where an idea ends, okay? Where that idea ends, you have in parentheses the last name of the author and the page number, okay? Now, what does that brown 67 mean? Well, okay, here's a sample works cited list. Again, I'll go into more detail on this next week, but in a works cited list, you have all of your authors with their last name first and first name in alphabetical order, okay? And again, I'll detail this more next week. But that first one said Brown, okay? And what does that Brown mean? Brown means the book by Alan Brown, The Way to Heaven. It was published in Philadelphia by the Mifflin Publishing Company in 2013. And then this note tells you in here that it was page 67 in Brown's book, okay? So what you're doing with your parenthetical referencing and with your works cited is you're creating a roadmap so that you're telling that this idea came from Brown's book. And who's Brown? Well, we tell you right here who Brown is, okay? So you're creating a roadmap from the idea. Here's where the idea is, Brown, okay? This tells who Brown is, and then what page in Brown's book? Boom, back here. So again, you're creating a roadmap. Author, what book? Down here, here's the author, and then page number, okay? That's the way a lot of your parenthetical references will go. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about other exceptions. But going on, then we have a direct quote. You can see that because we have quotation marks around whatever it is that it goes here. And where it ends then, that's from Adam's book, okay? Now, who's Adams, and why do we have the word why? If you look at this works cited list, you'll see on here that there's a book by Robert Adams, The House on the Hill, and the publishing information. And then underneath that, there are 3 lines. What that means is these 3 lines, 3 dashes, mean the same as the author just above. So Robert Adams wrote 2 books that we used in this research paper, okay? And so we can't just put down the author's last name because we wouldn't know which book, okay? So in the note that we have, again, back to this sheet, it says Adams Y92. Okay, what's the Y mean? Well, notice the name of the book is Why Did You Do That? Okay, all you need in your parenthetical reference is enough of the title of the book so that the author knows which book by this author you're referring to. All we had to do was put down Adams, why, and then the page from the book, Why Did You Do That? Okay? So that's if you use 2 books written by the same author. And that happens more often than you might think, because a lot of times people write more than 1 book about the same kind of information. Okay? So then going further on in this made-up text here, we go down further, some more lines of text, another idea coming in here, and then we have another reference with Adam's name on, the house. Okay? And if you look at our works cited list, it says Adams, Robert, The House on the Hill. Okay, so the house tells us enough about this book of Adams to let us know which of his books. Okay. So now, a lot of times in your information that you do, most of your information is going to come from the web. I know that. Okay, most of the time you're not going to be using books. And that's fine. I told you from the beginning, that's fine, okay? A lot of things on the web don't have a title, okay? If you do have a title, then, if you have an author, first of all, then you give the author's name. Most of the time on the web, you don't have an author, but if you do, you use his name. If you don't have an author, then you use the title. And if you don't have a title, then in your parenthetical reference, and again, parenthetical reference, I mean the part in the parentheses, okay, telling where the idea comes from, then you'd put as much of the website as you need, the web address, so that the reader knows which piece of information this comes from, which of your sources from your works cited list that this comes from, okay? So keep in mind what we're doing all the way along is creating a roadmap from the end of the idea to your works cited list, and then if there's page numbers, back here to the page. A lot of times you don't have page numbers. You don't have them. You can't make them up, okay? Especially with internet articles. Most of the time they don't have page numbers. Don't worry about it. They don't have. So, in your parenthetical references, which go at the end of each idea that you take from somebody else, okay? They go at the end of each idea you take from somebody else. And that's most of your paper, because your paper isn't supposed to be from here, it's supposed to be from sources. Okay? Keep in mind that you have to tell where each idea that you take from somebody else comes from. In your parenthetical reference, you're starting the roadmap for your reader so that your reader can get to exactly where that idea came from. Again, if it's a book, it's easy. The author of the book and the page number, and then your works cited list, which we'll go into detail on next week, will give the rest of the information on what exactly that book is. If it's from the web and you have an author, fine. Author's last name will go in that parenthetical reference. If you don't have an author, but you have a title, then that'll go in that parenthetical reference. And you don't have an author or a title, then enough of the web address so that when your reader looks at your works cited list, your total list of references, when your reader looks there, they'll know which of those sources it came from and they can find it, okay? It's as simple as that. You're creating a roadmap. Don't fight it, okay? So I need you to be working on your research paper, because again, it's due in 2 weeks. And in this week's lesson, I explained to you how you go about getting it to me. Feel free to email me or call me with any questions. It's kind of hard to teach the research paper when we don't really get together. I know that. So I really do wish you'd ask me if you're really not sure of stuff on research papers. But I also want to tell you that your book does a pretty good job on all of this stuff, okay? For the form for parenthetical references, which means telling where specific ideas within your paper come from, in your book, the directory of them, the way that they show each one, the examples for all of these different kinds of parenthetical references, starts on 190 and goes to 194, okay? So there are a whole bunch of pages. There's 5 pages there that show you how to show where ideas come from right within your text, okay? Then also in your book, starting on 194 and going through 220, let me give you the exact page, 220, because there's a gazillion different kinds of things you could take information from. So anything that you might come up with appears somewhere between 196 and 220 in your book for samples of that kind of thing for your works cited list. Again, next week I'll detail works cited a little more, okay? So don't be in a rush to get everything done, but you should be in the process of actually writing your paper. And again, at the end of each idea that you take from somebody else, which is most of the stuff in your paper, you have to point out where that idea comes from, and you do that through a parenthetical reference, okay? And again, your book tells you that stuff, and I gave you the pages to do it. Questions, please email me. My TroCare email is up again. It wasn't running for a week or 10 days or something, but that's working again. And also my AOL address. Again, make sure that you label the subject TroCare English so that I make sure I look at it, because I get maybe 60 or 70 emails a day, most of which I delete without opening. But if you say TroCare English on there, I will open it. Feel free to text me, 861-8648, or to call me at 861-8648. If you call me and I don't answer, leave a message. I will call you back. Maybe not immediately. Sometimes I'm in class. Sometimes I'm driving the car. Who knows what. But I will call you back, okay? So we're getting there. You guys are doing a great job. And of course, there's stuff in this week's lesson and this week's assignment as well. But work on your research paper primarily. Many of you have to do some editing on your essays from last week, but that's pretty easy because I show you what you need to edit. Okay? Have a good week.